Okay then, hello everybody, and thanks for joining us on this webinar this afternoon. Just going to unpause slides. There we go. Paul, can I just check with you that you can see the slides okay there?
Yeah, coming through good.
Perfect, thank you. Right, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this Paolo's webinar session with a specific focus around the healthcare industry. I'd just like to introduce myself. I'm Matt Malloy. I'm responsible for the UK, and also with me today from Paolo's is Paul Fisher, who after a number of slides from myself, he'll be able to give you a live demonstration of the product, and then once we've done that, we'll have a little bit of time at the end for some Q&A. Okay, so I just wanted to really start off by just giving you a feel for who Paolo's are as an organisation, and the fact that we're a global organisation. As you can see there from the slide, we have a presence in many countries and regions around the world. I always like to show this slide because this is very recent. This came out a couple of months ago from IDC, and what it does is it really positions where Paolo's are in terms of some of the names that you're obviously very familiar with, the likes of Citrix, VMware, Microsoft, and Amazon. And IDC have positioned Paolo's as a major player within this space, within this virtual client computing vendor assessment. And I think you can see there from the slide that we're in good company there with alongside Amazon and Microsoft in the major players segment of that chart. Okay, so just really moving on just to talk a little bit more specifically about healthcare. I'd like to just really pull up a couple of key facts, really. Just going through some of them on that slide. 25% increase in mobility within healthcare by 2025. I think that's quite a significant increase over the next 5 years. 89% of organizations, healthcare organizations, experienced a data breach within the past 2 years. And then over on the right-hand side of the slide, looking at the increase in the usage of devices such as tablets and smartphones, 97% of nurses using these devices at the bedside. And then the final stat on there, which I think is a very important statistic, 15 is the minimum number of systems that staff are typically having to log into on a daily basis. And that's obviously very time consuming in doing that. In terms of challenges that are facing healthcare organizations, from an accessibility perspective, there's an increase in telemedicine, and that will continue to increase. A lot of the healthcare organizations are challenged with the fact that records are not always centralized. And, coming back to the logins, multiple logins, requiring many different types of credentials, and the fact that, staff are having to log into, on average, 15 different systems on a daily basis. Talked about mobility. There's certainly some challenges with the difficulty in communicating across many different systems that exist. And, that can have an impact on this inability to make timely decisions. And ultimately, there's a real need to access the data in real time, on the go, from different types of devices. From a security perspective, there's a lot of risk associated with all of these different types of devices. There's a lot of concern and with regard to the privacy and the data protection of all of this sensitive information, and of course all of the sort of regulatory and compliance requirements around that. Okay, so in terms of the opportunity with regards to parallels and our RAS solution, again, addressing these three key areas that I spoke about in the last slide. From an accessibility perspective, the Parallels RAS solution enables medical staff to have 24/7 access to information, to applications, and to allow these medical applications to be available and accessible from absolutely any device in any location. So you're getting that continuous fast access, and it's a highly available solution to minimize downtime. From a mobility perspective, we've got this ability to switch between different devices on the go. Really, there's a number of features which we'll be able to talk about when we go to the live product demonstration that really do enhance the user experience. Smart gestures and various things that lend themselves to helping access applications from mobile devices like smartphones, like iPads. And from a security perspective, providing robust security features, SAML, for example, two-factor authentication, and again, we'll cover that in a little bit more detail when we run through the product. User experience on any device from any location. It enables healthcare organizations to be more agile with a centralized architecture that supports RDSH and VDI from either on-premise, from the public cloud, or from a hybrid solution. And finally, from a security perspective, reducing the risk of data loss and malicious activity by preventing unauthorized access to applications and data, and that's obviously very important. Okay, I'd like to just hand over to Paul so that we can run through a demonstration, and then following the demo, we'll open up for a Q&A session at the end. Over to you, Paul.
Thanks, Matt. Good afternoon, everybody, or maybe good morning, depending on where you're connecting from, or maybe if you're watching this back as a recording. Either way, thanks for joining. So yeah, I think what I would like to do is just to pull together some of the things that Matt's been talking about and just show you, from an administrator perspective, what the solution looks like, and also, from a user perspective as well. And I'll talk about as we go through some of the key things that we see in healthcare that are really advantageous for the workers or for the clinicians. So let me go ahead and try and share my screen, and hopefully that's coming any second. Here we go. So can you see that okay, Matt?
Yeah, that looks good. Yep, perfectly.
Excellent. Okay. So really, remote application server, or RAS as we shorten it to, in a nutshell, is about delivering Windows applications and desktops to anyone, anywhere, at any time. Remote application server is a very flexible product. It's very cost effective when we look at it from a solutions point of view, and really that sums up from the ability or the flexibility that we can have and provide essentially the right desktop to the right user. So we don't need to go and necessarily apply an expensive VDI solution to all users just because a small handful of those users need VDI. We can deliver a session host desktop, full desktop or applications, and that we could deliver that to 90% of the users, and that is a much more cost-effective way. So, as I say, yeah, the flexibility in the products, we can use that to deliver the right technology to the right users, and ultimately that brings down the cost of the solution. So what we're looking at here is the management console. I've already logged in, and I've gone to the farm area or farm section and looking at a particular site. So we can have multiple sites under a farm, and then we can manage those sites from this one console. Sites can be data centers. They can be data centers that are on premise, or they could be a hybrid scenario, or maybe a full cloud scenario. So I know that we've got some customers that are on premise today, but they're starting to look at cloud opportunities. So yeah, we could have one site that starts off on premises, and another site could be in AWS or Azure or the preferred cloud provider there. We're looking at the designer, and this is a good place to start, really. It gives you an idea of what a solution can look like, and this is obviously just my lab, so it can be architected different depending on your requirements. But really, the solution is very simple, and going back to talking about a cost-effective solution, that helps with that point as well. That it's very easy to manage, very easy to upgrade, very easy to install and get started quickly. And we've certainly seen fruits of that with the recent climate of getting people working from home really quickly. So looking at the top then, we have the secure client gateways. They do two roles. They'll provide the HTML5 portal, which I'll show you shortly, and also any external connections or internal connections, but typically external connections, it will secure those. So we only go over port 43, and that's wrapped in SSL encryption, and it essentially provides that secure connection to the back-end infrastructure, and whether that's a session host desktop or a VDI desktop or even the remote PCs. And I'll talk a little bit more in depth on those shortly. But just before I do, the publishing agent, this role is really the brains of the solution. It can be known as the connection broker, and it's involved in lots of things. So when users are connecting, it's obviously the first thing would be authenticating the user, and whether that's including SAML or two-factor authentication or smart cards. And we do work with Imprivator as well, so clinicians can just tap and log in, and that really is one of the really big advantages of working with RAS and this technology, that we can dramatically reduce the login times for clinicians, so they can essentially just tap, they connect to their desktop, tap again, go out of the room, into the next room, tap on the next terminal, and then we can carry on exactly where it left off. And I'll try and demonstrate some of that from the user perspective shortly. So yeah, it's involved with the authentication. It's also involved with load balancing when it comes to sending the user to the most appropriate server, session host server. It's involved with the provisioning or auto scaling of new VDI instances or new session host servers based upon demand. So yeah, as users log in and demand increases, we can scale that out, whether that's on premise or in the cloud, to meet that demand. And I guess what's just as important as well, that we can scale back. So as users log off and the system's not being utilized quite as much, we can scale down, remove those servers. And I suppose that becomes more important in the cloud environment, because sort of directly saving money at that point, compute costs. So over on the right, these three boxes are what I would class as the back-end infrastructure. And as mentioned, this is the servers or the virtual machines that are providing the platform for applications and desktops for the users. Most cost effective, again, as mentioned, as the session host at the top, and that's because we can get many users connecting to one server, and we can provide a full desktop. We call that session-based VDI. Looks like Windows 10 to the user, pretty much none the wiser. And there's flexibility within that as well. So I've talked about Windows 10 or 2016, 2019 in the server world, but we can support, still at the moment, although we follow the Microsoft support cycles, 2008 R2 through to 2019. So yeah, we do see customers with sort of in-house, maybe legacy applications that still need to run on older versions of the operating system, and we can support that, side by side with the latest operating systems as well. This section is around virtual desktops. So Windows 10 virtualized, it's a one-to-one relationship. So for 100 users, you need 100 instances of Windows 10 created. So you can see there that that's going to add more cost into your infrastructure and your environment. This section is also where we start to look at the templating and provisioning out VMs when we need them. So that auto-scale conversation that we just talked about. And then finally, we have remote PCs. Now, there are a few use cases for this, and we're seeing one at the moment, unfortunately, where essentially any PC client operating system on the network we can import into RAS and provide that secure remote access. So that's been a really quick way to get users connecting from home without a lot of infrastructure requirements or setting up. So really just a couple of virtual machines, and we can have a highly available and highly scalable solution that's connecting users back to their PCs under their desk remotely. There are some other use cases with that, but we won't concentrate on those today. So yeah, as mentioned, just if you notice, but essentially these are the host names and I've got two virtual machines. And I've doubled up the roles on there, so I've got the secure client gateway and the publishing agent. And the reason for mentioning that is that with just those two machines, we do have a highly available and highly scalable solution, and that's without the requirement for centralized database, and the additional management and cost that brings. So, really and truly, as mentioned, it's a very easy solution to manage and set up, and very low on sort of infrastructure resource. The management, again, is very simple and easy to use, very wizard driven, and even from this page we can get access to various wizards. So I can bring up the add VDI provider, which is essentially what we see over here on the right, and I can go through virtualization. So these are maybe the on-premise hypervisors that you might have, and you can see all the list of the different ones we support there, and we add to that fairly regularly. So the recent one being scale computing from the hyper-converged solution. So we can very quickly add in new VDI providers there. And just to mention this, we can choose cloud computing as well, and then we can put in our Azure subscription, and essentially we can treat Azure as a hypervisor as well, so we can have a template on there and provision out new virtual machines, new virtual desktops or session hosts from that as and when we need. Again, we can do that auto-scaling bit as well. And there are other wizards here to add new gateways and things like that. So with a couple of clicks, we can really expand the solution, and of course we can with APIs, PowerShell APIs, for example. We can script those as well should we want to. So from an admin point of view, let's say we've finished setting up our environment and we've got it all set up and ready to actually provide access to users. We go to the publishing section. So here you can see I've got another already have published a number of applications and a number of different desktops, so session-based VDI, as we talked about, desktop-based VDI. But to publish something new, again, we just bring up a wizard, and then we have a few choices. You can publish just applications, and I'll go through that because there is a bit more to see there. But if it was a session-based or desktop-based VDI desktop we wanted to deploy, we can just choose that option. We do support application virtualization technologies as well. We could just publish web links, or maybe access to a particular document, or maybe file share location for the users. Let's go through application. I'm going to choose session hosts, but we can publish from VDIs and remote PCs. I'm going to choose installed applications, and then I'm going to choose this group. What I'll actually do is go off and search the start menu and things for available applications. So now I can just simply choose which applications I want to publish. Let's just go with these ones, and we can go next. It's giving us an overview of what we're going to publish, so we just keep going next and finish, and then we click apply to commit the settings. So there we can see that those applications have been published, and if we look at some of the properties there, we can go and change some of those. We can add filtering, so by default all users could get access to that. But if we wanted to lock it down a bit more to certain users or user groups, we can, and we can combine that with maybe what operating system type they're connecting from, or maybe what subnet or the MAC address of the client. So we can really tie that down, lock that down, and add some additional security into who can get access to that particular application or desktop. Okay, so I'm going to change hats a little bit and connect as a user. There are a number of ways in which we can connect. Now, typically what we see in healthcare is that it's there's terminals on trolleys that get wheeled around, and then typically they're thin clients or repurposed PCs that made into a thin client-like device. And more often than not, as mentioned before, we're integrating with something like Imprivator, so the clinicians just come and tap it and connect. This is
Paul, just to interrupt, just briefly. I think we've got a question from Mohammed. Mohammed, do you want to go ahead?
I don't know whether he can come off mute. Matt, has he typed
sure.
the question?
Okay, yeah. If Mohammed, maybe if you want to type the question in the chat box, and then we can pick that up and answer that question for you.
Yep, I'll carry on until that arrives, shall I?
Yeah, good idea. Great.
Okay, so so this is one way in which users can connect. More often than not, through the web portal, it might be external, and we do have a client that can be installed. And this client here is very similar when we, if we connect it from iPads or Android devices or even phones. But let's start over here. So I'm going to log in with my account. And we can see the applications presented to us, and we can see the new ones that we published a couple of minutes ago. And you can see the desktops that we saw in the admin console and the applications as well. What I'll do is I'm going to start with some applications. And so I'm going to right click and ask it to open in HTML5. The reason being, because during login it's detected that I've got the client installed, it will default to that. I just wanted to first really highlight that we can open the applications purely in HTML5, where you don't need to install any client. So any HTML5 compliant browser can be used to access your applications. Now, actually, I've just connected to an existing session, so I've already got some applications open that it's reconnected me to. Let's go and create another document. And of course, I can drop back to here and launch other applications. So if I wanted to open Excel as well, we can do that, and we can see Excel there. So let's just create a document there. And the reason for creating a few documents is, even though we're not connecting to a full desktop here, we have the ability as a user to flick between not only the applications but the documents that we have open. And that's the same across all of our clients, even mobile device clients. Lots of functionality in there to make those really usable from a small form factor point of view. Pinch and zoom and quickly flick between the applications as well. So as mentioned, we can launch desktops from here. But this time I'll launch a desktop, but I will launch it with the native client. So I'm just going to double click. And what we should see here is we're connecting to a session that's already been in use. So let's minimize that. So there we go. So I wanted to have that ready for you. So yeah, I've been working on this in another room, and as a clinician, I've just come around into the next room, tap my card, and connect it back to the desktop, and I can, carry on working from this room. So yeah, as mentioned, if I let's minimize all this, let's come back to our desktop. Excuse this. I can connect from this environment, or this client as well. And we can see we've got the same applications and same desktops. And as a user, I could say, send that desktop or that shortcut to the desktop. And actually as well, by default, it'll be available in the Finder. And then the Windows will be available in the Start menu. So you can integrate in applications into the desktop that are published through RAS. So you may have a scenario of, 95% of your applications are on the PC, but there's just a few that you want to centrally manage and have on a server in the data center, and we can then publish those through RAS and integrate them into the desktop. So let's go back to the management console and just highlight a few other things in there. We have universal printing and scanning support. So any printer or scanner device that's attached to the client PC, or that mobile kiosk, will be available in the session, in the VDI session, in the session host session, or for an application. We do have device manager as well. So I was previously mentioning the repurposed maybe PCs that you might want to use to sort of sweat that asset, make it last longer. With the device manager, we are able to provide better management of those devices, and that might be power management. So we can power them on, power them off, reboot them, log users off. We can actually shadow those as well, so we can give help desk staff better tools to support those mobile kiosks, those devices. So from a session point of view and that client point of view, we can do that. And we can do certain things like replace the desktop, put it into kiosk mode. And really, in a nutshell, what those things do is just improve the login process. So users don't necessarily see a desktop and then connect to another desktop. They're just presented with their options, application options or desktop options, and they launch those from there. So it's just cleaning up that login process and providing extra management for you for those devices. Speaking of management, we have policies, so we can centrally manage security aspects. So we might want to say, turn off the clipboard, turn off drive redirection, those sort of things. And then we just have, day-to-day management and setting various settings for the users, so they don't need to be burdened with making those changes. So we can set things like performance settings as well. Maybe primary and secondary connections, which is a good way of having a sort of a DR solution. So primary doesn't respond, the secondary connection will be tried. And so those sort of settings we can set centrally via those policies. And then finally, we also have monitoring and reporting. Now, everything that we've talked about, or I've talked about here, is included in the RAS license. So there's no additional, you want to connect externally, you need a different license, or you want to deploy in the cloud, or a hybrid scenario, you need a different license. Everything's included. So it doesn't matter what hypervisor you're deploying on, whether you've got a certain percentage in session host and a certain percentage on full VDI, it doesn't matter. And that obviously includes this monitoring and reporting. So this is just giving us a historical overview of things like CPU usage, disk utilization, network utilization. We can change the time ranges. We're looking over the last hour. We can put custom ones in, etc. And then reporting. That's more about having sort of PDF creation, which can be emailed out. Things like users logged on, the session lengths, the applications that they've used, those sort of things. So I think that's it from giving you a quick overview and a quick demo. Matt, did that question come through?
Yeah, let me just read out the question from Mohammed. So here we go. I have a problem with starting a folder to remote computers. The remote user can see the servers and other hard disks. How do I make the users only see the published folder?
That's certainly possible. I think what might be best is to get Mohammed's contact details, and we'll take that offline because that's quite a specific thing to discuss. I'm not sure if it's relevant for the sort of the healthcare in general. So I think I'd rather take that offline if that's all right, Mohammed.
Okay, yeah, we can do that, and also it's worth mentioning that everybody who's on the session today, that will reach out to you specifically with a representative from the region from which you're in, so that we can follow up with you, and we can also answer any questions in more detail that you have. So perhaps I'll just give it a couple more minutes and just see if we've got any more questions coming in on the chat, and we can answer those. And then if there are no further questions at that stage, we can close the call. So I'll just give it another minute.
I've just reread that question again from Mohammed. It's just a case of turning off drive redirection, which can be done via those policies that we talked about. So yeah, as I say, we can get in contact. If you could just provide us your email address, I'll email you with a bit more details on how to do that.
I don't think we have any additional questions coming in at this stage. Are you able to, I'm just thinking, Paul, are you able to unmute anybody or not?